The fluorescent lights of St. Augustine Medical Center hummed their eternal song. It was a frequency most people learned to ignore. But for Evelyn Thatcher, that hum had been the soundtrack to 32 years of her life. 32 years of saving strangers, 32 years of watching the clock tick toward dawn while the rest of Seattle slept. Tonight the hum sounded different, final. The hallway of the ICU wing stretched before her like a corridor in a dream. White linoleum tiles, beige walls, the smell of disinfectant and desperation. Evelyn pushed the mop bucket forward, the wheels squeaking with each rotation. Left hand on the handle, right hand trembling slightly. Always trembling now. She was 58 years old. Her scrubs were faded blue, washed so many times the fabric had gone soft and thin. Her name tag read simply E. Thatcher, R.N. No title, no rank. Nothing to indicate that once in another life she had been called Valkyrie. The mop made wet circles on the floor. Swish, swish, swish. A meditative rhythm. Evelyn had learned to find peace in the simple tasks, the ones that didn't require decisions, the ones that didn't end with someone dying in her hands. Footsteps approached from behind. Expensive shoes on linoleum, the kind that cost more than her monthly rent. Christ, can you at least try not to be in the way? Dr. Garrett Ashford, 34 years old, Harvard Medical School, son of Senator Bradford Ashford, owner of a jawline that belonged on a cologne advertisement and an ego that filled every room he entered. Evelyn stepped aside, pulling the mop bucket with her. But Ashford's Italian leather shoe caught the edge of the bucket anyway. Water sloshed. He stumbled slightly, his 3 residents behind him stifling laughs. "You're just a janitor," Ashford said, steadying himself on the wall. His voice carried down the hallway, loud enough for the nurses at the station to hear, loud enough for the patients in the nearby rooms. Maybe they should train you people not to obstruct the actual medical staff. The residents laughed, not because it was funny, because Ashford signed their evaluations. "Sorry, doctor," Evelyn said quietly. Her eyes stayed on the floor. Ashford adjusted his white coat and continued walking. The residents followed like ducklings. Their footsteps faded toward the physician's lounge. Evelyn stood alone in the corridor. The mop dripped. The fluorescent lights hummed. And for just a moment, for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours, her vision fractured. She wasn't standing in a sterile American hospital anymore. She was kneeling in sand, hot sand, the kind that gets everywhere in your boots, in your teeth, in the open wounds of the 19-year-old Marine bleeding out beneath your hands. The sound of incoming mortars, the smell of copper and cordite, someone screaming for their mother. Then it passed. Evelyn blinked. She was back. ICU hallway, Seattle, 11:34 p.m. on a Tuesday in January. She gripped the mop handle tighter to stop her right hand from shaking. Just a janitor, she thought. That's all I am now. She went back to mopping. The break room smelled like burnt coffee and exhaustion. Evelyn sat at the small table in the corner, the one with the wobbly leg that everyone avoided. In front of her was a styrofoam cup of something that claimed to be coffee but tasted like regret. The door opened. Dr. Lillian Hayes entered, her surgical scrubs still spotted with blood from an earlier case. She was 41, with gray streaking through her dark hair and the kind of tired eyes that came from too many overnight shifts. "You let him do it again," Lillian said, pouring herself coffee. "Do what—" Evelyn didn't look up from her cup. "Talk to you like you're nothing." "I'm a night shift nurse who cleans floors, Lily. That's pretty close to nothing." Lillian sat down across from her. The chair scraped against the linoleum. "You were a war hero." "Was." Past tense. "Evie." "I'm 58 years old," Evelyn interrupted. She finally looked up, meeting Lillian's eyes. "I have PTSD. My hands shake. No hospital in this city will hire me for anything more than what I'm doing now. I'm lucky to have this job." "Lucky." Lillian repeated the word, bitter in her mouth. Evelyn's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen. A reminder from the Red Cross. "Your RH null donation is due next week. Please schedule an appointment." "Still getting those?" Lillian asked. "Every month, like clockwork." 1 in 6 million people have that blood type." "Makes me special," Evelyn said without humor. "Makes you a unicorn." "More like a blood bag with legs." Lillian stirred her coffee, the spoon clicking against the styrofoam. "Ashford knows about your service, right? About what you did." "He knows." "And he still treats you like military medicine is battlefield butchery." Evelyn recited the words she'd heard Ashford say a dozen times. "We don't actually heal people. We just patch and pray. He's a child-playing doctor because his daddy bought him a degree. He's an attending physician. I'm a nurse who pushes a mop. That's the hierarchy." Lillian opened her mouth to argue, then her pager went off. She looked down at it and her expression changed. "I have to go. Trauma coming in." She stood, hesitated, then put a hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "One of these days, someone's going to see who you really are." "I hope not," Evelyn said quietly. Lillian left. The door swung shut. Evelyn sat alone with her terrible coffee and the memories that never quite went away. On the wall a clock ticked. 11:47 p.m. Somewhere in the hospital a monitor beeped. Regular, steady. The sound of a heart that kept beating because someone somewhere knew what they were doing. Evelyn closed her eyes and listened. The call came at 12:43 a.m. Code Blue, room 314. Evelyn was restocking supply closets when she heard it over the intercom. Her body responded before her mind caught up. 32 years of training, of muscle memory, of instinct. She dropped the box of gauze and ran. Room 314 was chaos. Controlled chaos, but chaos nonetheless. A male patient, early 30s, construction worker build, lay on the bed seizing. His skin had taken on a gray pallor, the kind of gray that meant cells were dying. Jason Whitmore, 32 years old, admitted 6 hours ago with sepsis from a contaminated construction site wound. Evelyn had checked on him during her rounds. He'd been stable, uncomfortable but stable. Now he was crashing. Dr. Ashford stood at the head of the bed barking orders. 2 residents flanked him. Jessica Keller, a 24-year-old nurse barely out of school, was drawing up medications with shaking hands. "Sinus tac at 140, someone called out. "BP dropping, 90/60. "Get me epi," Ashford snapped. 1 milligram IV push. Evelyn froze in the doorway. Her eyes went to the monitor. Heart rate 147, blood pressure 88/58. But there, in the corner of the screen, was the lab value that made her blood turn cold. Potassium 7.4 millimoles per liter, critical, life-threatening, and about to get worse. "Dr. Ashford," Evelyn said, stepping into the room. He didn't turn. "Not now." "Doctor, his potassium is—" "I said not now." Ashford's voice could have cut glass. Nurse Keller pushed the epi. Evelyn watched Jessica's hands tremble as she attached the syringe to the IV port. "His potassium is 7.4, Evelyn said louder. "Epinephrine will trigger cardiac arrest." Now Ashford turned. His face was flushed, whether from anger or the heat of the moment, Evelyn couldn't tell. "Did I ask for input from the cleaning staff?" The room went silent. Even the monitors seemed to hold their breath. "I'm a registered nurse," Evelyn said calmly. "With mop duty," Ashford shot back. "Nurse Keller, push the epi." Jessica looked between Ashford and Evelyn. She was 24. Student loans and a provisional license. A brand new apartment she could barely afford. She pushed the epinephrine. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then Jason Whitmore's body went rigid. The monitor screamed. The rhythm on the screen changed from chaotic to catastrophic. Ventricular fibrillation. Then nothing at all. Flatline. "No pulse," someone yelled. Ashford's face went white. "Start compressions." A resident jumped on the bed, positioned his hands over Jason's sternum, started pumping. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Charge the defib to 200, Ashford said, but his voice had lost its edge. He sounded young suddenly, uncertain. Evelyn stepped forward. "Get back," Ashford said. She didn't get back. Instead, she moved with a speed that surprised everyone in the room, including herself. She grabbed Ashford by the shoulder and physically moved him aside. Not roughly, but firmly. The way you'd move someone out of the path of an oncoming car. "What the hell are you—" Evelyn was already at the bedside. She pushed the resident off Jason's chest. "Calcium gluconate," she snapped. 2 grams. IV push. Now." Jessica stared at her. "Move." The voice that came out of Evelyn's mouth wasn't the quiet, deferential night nurse. It was Valkyrie, the corpsman who'd kept 63 service members alive when everything was falling apart. Jessica grabbed the calcium gluconate. Evelyn climbed onto the bed. Both knees on the mattress straddling Jason's body, she positioned her hands on his chest. Not the way they taught in civilian CPR classes. The way they taught in combat medicine courses. Aggressive, precise, designed to restart a heart that had quit under fire. She compressed. Hard. The bed frame groaned under the force. "Push the calcium," she said. "Slow. 10 seconds." Jessica pushed it into the IV line. Evelyn counted in her head. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Get me calcium chloride," she said. 10 milliliters. And someone call respiratory. I need a bag valve mask ready if this doesn't work. She compressed again and again. Her arms knew the rhythm. Her body remembered the count. This wasn't the first time she'd fought death hand to hand. 30 seconds passed. "Still flat line," someone whispered. Evelyn kept going. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her right hand trembled, but she compensated, bearing down with her left. 45 seconds. "Evie," Lillian's voice from the doorway. When had she arrived? "Not done," Evelyn said through gritted teeth. 1 minute. Then a blip on the monitor. Then another. The flat line began to dance, erratic at first, then finding rhythm, finding life. Jason Whitmore gasped. His chest heaved beneath Evelyn's hands. "Sinus rhythm," someone breathed. "BP coming up, 95/68. Pulse is strong." Evelyn climbed off the bed slowly. Her legs were unsteady. She looked at the monitor, confirming what her hands had already told her. He was back. She turned to face Ashford. His expression was a complicated mix of relief, humiliation, and rage. The rage won. "You just assaulted an attending physician," he said quietly. "Dangerously." "I saved a patient," Evelyn replied. "You used non-standard techniques. You violated protocol. I kept him alive." The room was silent. Residents stared at their shoes. Nurses suddenly found paperwork to do. Only Lillian stayed standing in the doorway, like a witness to something that couldn't be unsaid. Ashford stepped closer to Evelyn. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of a threat. "My father is Senator Bradford Ashford, Armed Services Committee. 1 phone call and this hospital loses every federal contract we have. 1 call." Evelyn met his eyes. "Then you better make that call, doctor." Ashford's jaw clenched. "Director's office. 1:15 a.m. Don't be late." He walked out of the room. The residents followed. Evelyn stood next to Jason Whitmore's bed. Her hand found his wrist, checking his pulse the old-fashioned way. Strong and steady. "You did the right thing," Lillian said from the doorway. "I did the only thing," Evelyn replied. But in her chest her heart was pounding. Because she knew what came next. She'd seen this ending before. Different hospital, different doctor, same result. Some fights you can't win, even when you're right. Director Constance Hargrove's office was on the 4th floor in a part of the hospital where the lights were warmer and the floors didn't smell like disinfectant. This was where the administrators lived. The people who ran the business of saving lives without getting their hands dirty. Evelyn sat in one of the 2 chairs across from Hargrove's desk. Ashford sat in the other, as far from Evelyn as possible. His leg bounced, a tell. He was nervous. Hargrove was 62, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob, and reading glasses that hung from a chain around her neck. She'd been director for 8 years. Before that, she'd been a nurse. That fact gave Evelyn a small, probably foolish hope. Dr. Ashford, Hargrove said, her voice measured and professional. Walk me through what happened in room 314. Ashford straightened in his chair. The patient presented with severe sepsis, declining hemodynamics. I ordered epinephrine per ACLS protocol. He paused. The patient went into cardiac arrest. I began resuscitation procedures. That's when Ms. Thatcher physically assaulted me, pushed me away from the patient, and administered medications without physician authorization. The patient lived, Evelyn said. That's not the point, Ashford snapped. That's exactly the point. Hargrove held up a hand. Ms. Thatcher, did you physically remove Dr. Ashford from the patient's bedside? Yes. Did you administer calcium gluconate and calcium chloride without a physician's order? Yes. And you understand that as a registered nurse, you don't have the authority to override an attending physician's treatment plan. Evelyn took a slow breath. I understand hospital policy. I also understand that the patient had a potassium level of 7.4. Epinephrine in the presence of critical hyperkalemia causes ventricular fibrillation, which is exactly what happened. Dr. Ashford's order would have killed Jason Whitmore. My order was standard ACLS protocol, Ashford said, his voice rising. She has no right to— Your order didn't account for the lab values, Evelyn interrupted. You didn't look at the potassium. Are you calling me incompetent? I'm saying you made a mistake. Ashford's face went red. He turned to Hargrove. My father is Senator Bradford Ashford. He chairs the Armed Services Committee. This hospital receives $17 million annually in federal grants for trauma research, military contracts, veteran care programs. He let that sink in. One phone call. That's all it takes. The room went quiet. Hargrove removed her glasses. She cleaned them with a cloth from her desk drawer, a stalling tactic. Evelyn had seen it before. Ms. Thatcher, Hargrove finally said, you've been with us for 14 years. Yes, ma'am. And your service record before that. Navy Hospital Corpsman, 4 deployments. Decorated. Yes, ma'am. Hargrove put her glasses back on. This isn't the first time you've had a conflict with Dr. Ashford. It wasn't a question. No, ma'am. And you understand that regardless of the outcome, the way you handled this situation violated hospital protocol. Evelyn said nothing. There was nothing to say. Hargrove looked at the file on her desk, then at Ashford, then at Evelyn. I don't have a choice here, she said quietly. The hospital can't risk losing federal funding. We serve too many veterans, too many active duty families. Evelyn felt something settle in her chest, heavy and familiar, the weight of inevitability. Effective immediately, your employment with St. Augustine Medical Center is terminated. The words hung in the air like smoke. You're firing her for saving someone, Lillian's voice came from the doorway. No one had heard her arrive. Are you serious? Dr. Hayes, this doesn't concern you, Hargrove said. The hell it doesn't. She saved Jason Whitmore's life. She violated protocol. Because the protocol was wrong. Hargrove stood. The conversation was over. Mrs. Thatcher, please collect your belongings and return your badge to security. You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay and information about COBRA benefits in the mail. Evelyn stood. Her legs were steady. Her hands were not. She reached to her scrubs and unpinned her name badge. E. Thatcher, R.N. She placed it on Hargrove's desk. I've been fired from better places, Evelyn said quietly. At least this time I know I did the right thing. She walked to the door. Lillian reached for her arm, but Evelyn shook her head. It's fine, Lily. It's not fine. It's done. Evelyn walked out of the office, down the carpeted hallway, to the staff locker room. She opened her locker. Inside was a cardboard box, the kind used for chart storage. She'd known somehow that she'd need it. She put her stethoscope in the box, her extra scrubs, the coffee mug Lillian had given her 3 Christmases ago. In the back of the locker was something she hadn't looked at in years. A photograph, creased and faded. Evelyn in Navy fatigues 20 years younger, surrounded by service members in a combat zone. all of them grinning at the camera like they were invincible. 7 of the people in that photo were dead now. Evelyn put the photograph in the box. She closed the locker door. The walk through the hospital took forever, and no time at all. Staff members saw her coming, saw the cardboard box, and looked away. That's how these things worked. Termination was contagious. Don't make eye contact. Don't get involved. Evelyn pushed through the main entrance doors at 1:53 a.m. The night air hit her face, cold. January in Seattle meant rain, and tonight was no exception. A light drizzle, the kind that soaked you slowly. She walked to the parking garage, Level 3, Section B, where she'd parked her 2015 Honda CR-V every night shift for 14 years. The garage was nearly empty. Sodium vapor lights buzzed and flickered, casting everything in sick yellow. Her footsteps echoed on concrete. She reached her car, set the cardboard box on the hood, fumbled in her pocket for keys. And then, for the first time all night, Evelyn Thatcher allowed herself to feel it. The anger, the exhaustion, the bone-deep weariness of fighting a system that punished you for being right. She slumped against the car door, and she cried. Not the pretty crying from movies, the ugly kind, the kind that comes from a place so deep you didn't know it existed. 32 years of saving lives, and this is how it ended. Fired for doing her job, alone in a parking garage with a cardboard box of cheap belongings. The rain fell harder. Evelyn wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She picked up the box, opened the car door, set the box on the passenger seat. She sat in the driver's seat. The car smelled like old coffee and the vanilla air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. She put the key in the ignition, but didn't turn it. Instead, she just sat there, thinking about Barnaby, her cat, who would be waiting at home, thinking about the retirement that had just come 15 years early, thinking about what the hell she was supposed to do with the rest of her life. The clock on the dashboard read 2:11 a.m. Evelyn took a breath. She was about to turn the key. That's when she heard it. A sound. Distant at first. So faint she thought she'd imagined it. A low thrumming, like a bass note played on an instrument she couldn't quite identify. She froze her hand still on the key. The sound grew, not louder, deeper. The kind of sound you felt in your chest before you heard it with your ears. Rhythmic. Familiar. Evelyn's heart began to pound. She knew that sound. She'd heard it 100 times. In deserts, in mountains, on ships in forward operating bases and landing zones carved out of hostile territory. The sound of rotors, heavy, military, multiple. The vibration intensified. The car began to shake. The rear-view mirror trembled. Outside car alarms started going off. One, then another, then a dozen. Evelyn's breath caught. The sound became a roar. And somewhere above the parking garage, somewhere in the dark Seattle sky, something was coming. Something was coming for her. The roar grew until it swallowed everything else. Every car alarm in the parking garage, every thought in Evelyn's head, every breath in her lungs. She threw open the car door and stepped out into the rain. The sound was coming from above, from everywhere. The concrete ceiling of the garage vibrated. Dust and debris shook loose from the support beams. Evelyn ran, not away from the sound, toward it. She burst out of the stairwell onto the ground level just as the entire world exploded with light and noise and wind. 4 helicopters, not civilian birds, not medical evacuation units. Matte black Blackhawks, no markings, no numbers, no insignia. They descended on the hospital's main entrance like angels of war. The downdraft from their rotors turned the rain into horizontal needles. Every window in the hospital lobby rattled. Every car in the pickup lane rocked on its suspension. The helicopters didn't land gently. They dropped, hard, fast, military precision. Before the skids fully touched asphalt, before the rotors even began to slow, figures poured out. 6 from each bird. 24 total. They moved like liquid shadow, full tactical gear, plate carriers, Helmets with night vision mounts, rifles that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Evelyn stood frozen at the edge of the parking garage. Rain soaked through her scrubs. Her cardboard box of belongings lay forgotten somewhere behind her. The operators hit the ground in perfect formation. They swept the perimeter. Laser sights cut through the rain like red threads. The lobby of St. Augustine Medical Center was visible through the glass doors. Inside, Evelyn could see staff members, a security guard, 2 nurses, Dr. Ashford, who'd apparently lingered near the reception desk. All of them stood motionless, staring. The lead operator approached the doors. He was taller than the others, broader. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from doing impossible things and surviving them. He didn't knock. The doors opened automatically, and he strode inside. His team flanked him, 3 on each side. The rest remained outside, forming a perimeter. Through the glass, Evelyn watched him scan the lobby. His head turned with mechanical precision, taking in every face, every detail. He looked at the security guard, dismissed him, looked at the nurses, dismissed them, looked at Dr. Ashford, lingered for half a second, dismissed him. Then he raised his hand to the radio on his chest and spoke. Evelyn couldn't hear the words, but she could read lips. She'd learned that skill in the field when verbal communication meant giving away your position. "Where is Valkyrie?" The name hit her like a physical blow. No one had called her that in 14 years. The operator spoke again into his radio, louder now, urgent. "I need Valkyrie's location now." The receptionist behind the desk looked terrified. She shook her head. "There's no patient by that name." "Not a patient." The operator's voice was deep, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't waste words. "Evelyn Thatcher, former Navy hospital corpsman." Ashford stepped forward. Even from across the parking lot, Evelyn could see the confusion on his face. "The janitor." He said it with the same disdain he always used. "She was fired. She left about 20 minutes ago." The operator's head snapped toward Ashford. "Where?" It wasn't a question. "I don't know. The parking garage, probably. Level 3 is staff parking." The operator turned to his team. Hand signals, sharp, decisive. Half the team broke off, heading toward the parking structure, toward Evelyn. She should run, should hide, should do something. Instead, she stepped forward, out of the shadows, into the light, into the rain and the rotor wash and the chaos of 24 special operators tearing apart a hospital, looking for her. "I'm here," she said. Her voice was quiet, but in the strange acoustics of the moment, in the gap between helicopter engines winding down and car alarms still screaming, somehow it carried. The operator who'd been giving hand signals stopped, turned. Their eyes met across 50 feet of wet pavement. He moved toward her, not running, but covering ground fast, purposeful. The rain ran down his face. He had dark eyes, a scar through his left eyebrow, the kind of face that had seen things and refused to forget them. He stopped 3 feet away from her. "Evelyn Thatcher." "Yes." "Hospital Corpsman First Class. Service number 6472891. Call sign Valkyrie. Deployed overseas 4 combat tours 2005 to 2009 and 2010 to 2012. It wasn't a question, but Evelyn answered anyway. That was a long time ago. "Ma'am, I'm Captain Reese Callahan, SEAL Team 3. He didn't offer his hand, didn't smile. This wasn't a social call. "We need you to come with us." Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. "Come with you where—" "I can't disclose that information." "Then I'm not going." "Ma'am, this is a matter of national security. I just got fired. I'm going home to my cat." For the first time, something flickered across Callahan's face. Not quite sympathy, more like recognition. Like he understood exactly what those words meant. "I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am, but this isn't a request." The words hung in the air. Evelyn's training kicked in. Assess, analyze. 4 helicopters, 24 operators. This wasn't a casual pickup. This was an extraction. The kind you mounted when the asset was critical and time was running out. "What's happening?" she asked. "I can't tell you that here." "Then tell me why." Callahan hesitated, just for a second. Then he made a decision. Because you have something nobody else has, and someone needs it tonight. Someone who can't wait. Evelyn opened her mouth to respond, to demand more information, to refuse again. But before she could speak, Callahan's expression changed. His eyes widened, just slightly. And Evelyn, who'd spent 4 combat tours learning to read the faces of men under stress, recognized what she saw. Surprise, then alarm. "Get down!" Callahan roared. He moved, grabbing Evelyn, pulling her down, his body covering hers. The world exploded, not with sound this time, with light. Brilliant white light from somewhere behind the hospital. A diversionary charge. Callahan's radio erupted with voices. "Contact, rear explosion sector 4. Half the SEALs spun toward the explosion, weapons up, moving to engage. That's when the real attack came, not from the road, not from the obvious approach, from inside the parking garage itself, the structure Evelyn had just left. Level 2, the commercial vehicle level that had been empty for months during renovations. Except it hadn't been empty. Vincent Marlowe had been waiting there for 30 minutes. Ever since his inside source at the hospital had told him the SEALs were coming. Ever since he'd learned that Evelyn Thatcher was the target. He'd had time to position his team, time to set up the diversion, time to plan the ambush that would let him take what he needed while the most dangerous men on the planet were looking the wrong direction. 3 black panel vans roared out of the garage, modified, armored, fast. They didn't slow down. The lead van smashed through the metal barrier arm. Fragments of wood and metal flew. The SEALs were already reacting, turning, firing. But Marlowe's mercenaries had planned for this. Smoke grenades detonated from the vans. Thick white clouds billowed across the lot. Contact left multiple vehicles. Smoke out! Smoke out! Callahan was still on top of Evelyn, protecting her. His rifle came up, but the smoke was too thick. Thermal vision would help, but in the seconds it took to switch over, the vans were already there. Doors flew open. 8 men emerged. Not SEALs. Mercenaries. Professionals. Well-trained. Well-paid. They moved with precision. 2 laid down suppressing fire. The other 6 went for their objective, for Evelyn. Callahan fired. 3 round burst. 1 mercenary dropped, but there were too many, moving too fast, using the smoke as concealment. Rough hands grabbed Evelyn, pulled her away from Callahan. She fought, drove her elbow back, connected with ribs, heard a grunt. But the man holding her was stronger, younger, trained for this. "Evelyn," Callahan's voice through the smoke. She tried to call back, but a gloved hand covered her mouth. Then she saw him. Vincent Marlowe, stepping out of the middle van like he was exiting a limousine. Expensive suit, charcoal gray, not a hair out of place despite the chaos. He walked toward her, calm, unhurried. Behind him, his mercenaries formed a wall, keeping the SEALs at bay with coordinated fire. Marlowe pulled something from his jacket, a syringe. "I apologize for this, Ms. Thatcher," he said. His accent was British, cultured, but I'm on a rather tight schedule. Evelyn tried to pull away. The mercenary holding her tightened his grip. Marlowe pressed the syringe to her neck. "You have golden blood," he said. "RH null, 1 in 6 million, and tonight someone very valuable needs it." The needle pierced skin. Evelyn felt the cold rush of medication. Ketamine. Her medical mind recognized it immediately. Roughly 100 milligrams. Intramuscular. Onset 30 to 60 seconds. She had 30 seconds. Through the smoke she could see Callahan, fighting, trying to reach her, but there were 3 mercenaries between them now. "Find me," she tried to say, but her tongue wasn't working anymore. The world tilted. The rain became vertical. The ground rushed up. Strong arms caught her. Not Callahan's, Marlowe's men. They lifted her, carried her toward the van. Callahan broke through, weapon raised, but he couldn't shoot. Not without risking Evelyn. Marlowe looked at him. "Sorry, Captain, but I had 30 minutes to plan this extraction. You had 3 minutes warning. The math wasn't in your favor. He climbed into the van. His men followed. Last one in pulled Evelyn inside. The door slammed shut. Tires squealed. The vans accelerated, not toward the main road, toward the back exit, the service road that Marlowe's inside source had told him about, the one that bypassed the main gates. Callahan ran after them, but you can't chase a vehicle on foot. He watched them disappear into the night. Then he grabbed his radio. Valkyrie is code black. I repeat, Valkyrie is code black. Kidnapped by professional hostiles. 3 black panel vans, no plates visible, heading south on service road behind hospital. All units pursue. Air support requested. Find her. Now. Behind him, the SEALs were already moving, mounting up, engines roaring to life. But Marlowe had a head start. And in this business, 30 seconds could mean the difference between success and failure. Between life and death. Waking up from ketamine wasn't like waking from normal sleep. It was violent, disorienting, like being yanked out of a dream and thrown into cold water. Evelyn's eyes snapped open, harsh white light, fluorescent, industrial. The smell hit her next. Motor oil, rust, concrete, that particular odor of a building that hadn't seen maintenance in years. She tried to sit up, found she could. She wasn't restrained. That was concerning. People who kidnap you and leave you unrestrained either don't see you as a threat or they're confident you have nowhere to run. Evelyn looked around. Warehouse, massive. The kind used for shipping containers before the automation took over. High ceilings lost in shadow. Concrete floor stained with decades of industrial use. Empty metal shelving lined the walls like the ribs of a dead beast. Portable floodlights on stands provided harsh illumination. They hummed. A generator somewhere in the darkness provided power, and in the center of it all, surrounded by medical equipment that looked like it had been stolen from a hospital, was a makeshift operating table. On it lay a young man. Evelyn stood. Her legs were unsteady but functional. The ketamine was wearing off faster than expected, probably because she was 58 and her metabolism didn't process drugs the way a younger person's would. She walked toward the table, each step echoing in the vast space. The young man was unconscious, early 30s, athletic build, dark hair, pale skin. Too pale, the kind of pale that meant shock, blood loss, death approaching. He wore torn clothing, expensive brands, designer jeans. What had been a white dress shirt, now mostly red. The source of the red was obvious. Gunshot wound, upper right chest, entry wound the size of a dime, exit wound in his back the size of a silver dollar. Someone had packed it with combat gauze, applied pressure dressings, started an IV line of normal saline, but he'd lost blood. A lot of it. His chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid breaths. His lips had a blue tinge, cyanosis. His skin was clammy, cold sweat. Shock. Stage 3, maybe stage 4. "He's dying," a voice said from behind her. Evelyn turned. Vincent Marlowe stood there. Up close she could see he was in his early 50s, silver hair, perfectly styled, sharp features. The kind of face that aged well because it was built on good bones and expensive skin care. His suit was still immaculate despite the kidnapping, the firefight, the drive. "Who are you?" Evelyn asked. "Vincent Marlowe." "That doesn't answer my question. I'm the man who kidnapped you. I'm the man who's going to ask you to save that young man's life. And I'm the man who will probably kill you when this is over." He paused. Honesty seemed appropriate. Evelyn moved closer to the patient, her hands automatically reaching for his wrist, checking pulse, thready, weak, 142 beats per minute, racing to compensate for the blood loss. "Why me?" she asked. "Because he has Rh null blood," Marlowe said. "Same as you." Evelyn's head snapped up. "How do you know my blood type? I hacked the American Red Cross database 3 days ago, cross-referenced with the National Donor Registry, military medical records, hospital employment files." Marlowe spoke matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. You're one of 7 Rh null donors in the Pacific Northwest. You're the only one within 500 miles who isn't currently in a government database that my employers can access. Your employers. The people who pay me to do terrible things. Evelyn looked at the young man on the table. Really looked at him. His face was familiar. She'd seen it before, on television, on newspapers. Then it clicked. Ethan Blackwell, she said softly. Marlowe nodded. Senator Marcus Blackwell's son. Someone shot a senator's son. Someone was paid to shoot a senator's son, quite handsomely actually. And you're keeping him alive because the people who paid for the hit reconsidered. Turns out killing a senator's child creates more problems than it solves. Diplomatic complications, federal investigations, media circuses. Marlowe pulled out his phone, tapped the screen. So now they want leverage instead. They want Ethan alive, as a bargaining chip. Evelyn's mind raced through the implications. You could take him to a hospital. The people who want him dead have infiltrated hospitals, doctors, nurses, administrators. If Ethan Blackwell enters the medical system, someone will finish what the shooter started, a medication error, a misdosed sedative, an accidental fall. So you kidnapped me. So I kidnapped you. Evelyn looked back at Ethan. His breathing was getting worse, more labored, respiratory rate climbing, 30 breaths per minute. His body was failing. If I save him, you kill me, she said. Statement, not question. You know too much, you've seen too much. My employers don't leave loose ends. And if I don't save him, Marlowe's expression changed. Something flickered behind his eyes. Pain, desperation, fear. He pulled out his phone again, showed her a photograph. A little girl, maybe 8 years old. Dark hair and pigtails, gap-toothed smile, sitting on a tire swing. Summer dress, ice cream cone in hand, joy frozen in pixels. Sophia, Marlowe said, his voice cracked. Just barely. Just enough. My daughter. Evelyn felt something cold settle in her stomach. The syndicate has her, Marlowe continued. They took her from her grandmother's house 3 days ago, showed me proof of life. He swallowed hard. They said if Ethan Blackwell dies, Sophia dies, slowly, and they'll make me watch. The pieces fell into place. This wasn't about money. This was about a father trying to save his daughter, a man forced to commit atrocities because the alternative was watching his child suffer. You're a victim too, Evelyn said. I'm a mercenary who's killed 17 people over the last decade. I'm not a victim. I'm a monster who happens to love someone. Evelyn looked at Ethan, at the blood seeping through the bandages, at the monitor showing his vitals deteriorating. She looked at Marlowe, at the barely contained desperation in his eyes, at the phone still showing Sophia's smiling face. I need to know his exact blood type, she said. Direct transfusion without proper cross-matching could kill him as surely as the gunshot. Rh null. I have medical records, 3 independent confirmations. Marlowe produced a tablet, pulled up files, hospital records, blood bank documentation, genetic testing results, all showing the same thing, Rh null. The rarest blood type on Earth, same as Evelyn. I'll need supplies, she said. Proper IV equipment, saline, anticoagulants if you have them. Already here, Marlowe gestured to a supply cart. Medical equipment, some of it still in hospital packaging, and I need a guarantee. When this is over, you let me go. Marlowe met her eyes. I can't promise that. My employers will kill me either way. Evelyn interrupted. But you're a father. You understand what it means to protect someone. To do the impossible because the alternative is unthinkable. She stepped closer to him. So here's what I'm gambling on. You're not going to kill me. Because if you do, you become the thing you're trying to save your daughter from. You become the kind of person who murders nurses who save lives. Marlowe stared at her, silent. Then finally he nodded. I'll do what I can. That's all I can promise. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Evelyn turned to Ethan, rolled up her sleeve. Get me a 16-gauge IV catheter, she said, "and pray to whatever God you believe in that we're compatible." Setting up a direct transfusion was both simple and profound. Simple in the mechanics. Insert needle, connect tubing, let gravity and blood pressure do the rest. Profound in the intimacy. Two humans connected, one giving life, one receiving it. No intermediary, no blood bank, no storage, just the ancient primal act of one body sustaining another. Evelyn found her vein on the first try. She always did. 32 years of practice. The 16-gauge catheter slid in clean. Blood flowed into the collection bag. Dark red. Healthy. Rich with oxygen and platelets and all the microscopic machinery that kept humans alive. While her blood collected, she assessed Ethan more thoroughly. The gunshot wound was severe but survivable. The bullet had missed the subclavian artery. Miraculous, really. An inch to the left and he would have bled out in minutes. But it had nicked the lung. Probably pneumothorax. Collapsed lung. That explained the respiratory distress. The real danger was hypovolemic shock. He'd lost at least 2 liters of blood, maybe 3. His body was compensating, heart racing, blood vessels constricting, shunting blood away from extremities to protect vital organs. But compensation had limits. Soon, his system would crash. Multi-organ failure, death. "How long ago was he shot?" Evelyn asked. Marlowe checked his watch. 4 hours and 43 minutes. Where? Outside his apartment, downtown Seattle, Belltown. Professional hit, single shooter, .50 caliber, armor-piercing round. They were trying to kill him, not injure him. Yes. But he survived. His bodyguard pushed him at the last second, took the shot to the shoulder instead of Ethan's center mass. The bodyguard, Marlowe paused, didn't make it. Evelyn's blood bag was nearly full. She disconnected her own line, taped the insertion site, applied pressure with her free hand for 30 seconds. Then she turned to Ethan. Finding a vein on a patient in shock was harder. The body pulls blood away from the periphery, protecting the core. But Evelyn had done this in worse conditions. In helicopters, in vehicles moving over IED-cratered roads, in buildings that were actively being mortared. A quiet warehouse was almost easy. She found a vein in his left forearm, palpated it, felt the thread of pulse beneath her fingertips, inserted the catheter, watched for flashback, got it, connected the line. Her blood began flowing into Ethan Blackwell. It was strange, intimate, watching your life force enter another person, seeing the bag slowly empty, knowing that your cells, your plasma, your platelets were now becoming part of someone else's circulatory system. "How long will this take?" Marlowe asked. 20 minutes for this unit. Then I'll need to assess. If he's not stable, I'll need to give a second." "You'll give a second unit. I'll give what he needs to survive." Marlowe studied her. "You know I'm probably going to kill you when this is done." "You said probably. I'm gambling on that word." A small smile touched Marlowe's lips. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more afraid. I've been afraid before. It doesn't help." They stood in silence. The only sounds were the generator humming, the monitor beeping, the drip of blood moving through plastic tubing. Evelyn watched Ethan's vitals. Slowly, incrementally, they improved. Blood pressure crept up. 80 over 52, then 85 over 55. Heart rate decreased. 130, 125, 118. Color started returning to his face, the blue tinge fading from his lips. "It's working," Marlowe said. "It's buying time. He still needs surgery, proper surgical repair of that lung injury, antibiotics, monitoring for infection. He'll get that, once my employers have what they want from the senator." And what do they want? Information. Access. The senator chairs the Intelligence Committee. He knows things, classified things. They want him to share. Evelyn looked at Marlowe. "You're helping them blackmail a United States senator." "I'm saving my daughter." Those two things aren't mutually exclusive moral categories. I stopped thinking in moral categories the day I watched Sophia's kidnapping on video. Now I think in binary. She lives or she dies. That's the only calculation that matters. The blood bag was almost empty. Evelyn disconnected the line, checked Ethan's vitals again. Better. Definitely better. But not stable enough. I need to give him another unit, she said. You'll make yourself anemic. I've been anemic before. I'll recover. And if you pass out here, then you'll have a larger problem than just my blood, because if I'm unconscious, I can't save him if he crashes again. Marlowe considered, then nodded. One more unit, but that's the limit. Evelyn was setting up the second collection when she heard it. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. The sound of approaching vehicles. Marlowe heard it too. He stiffened, pulled out his phone, looked at a security feed. His face went pale. They found us, he said. Who? The SEALs. Your friends. He looked at his men positioned around the warehouse, called out in a voice that carried. Lock it down. Prepare for breach. Non-lethal force if possible. Our goal is to delay, not engage. 8 mercenaries moved into defensive positions, weapons ready, professional, disciplined. Evelyn's heart raced. If there's a firefight in here, Ethan dies. Stray bullets. The IV line will tear. He'll bleed out. Then we'll all have to be very careful, won't we? Outside, the sound of vehicles stopped. Silence. The kind of silence that happens right before violence erupts. Evelyn looked at Ethan. At the second IV line she'd just inserted, at the blood beginning to flow from her body to his, she made a decision. She positioned herself over Ethan, lying across him, her body as a shield. What are you doing? Marlowe asked. My job, Evelyn said. I'm protecting my patient. Marlowe stared at her. Then quietly, you're either very brave or very stupid. I've been both at different times, sometimes simultaneously. The warehouse lights cut out, pure darkness, absolute. The floodlights dying as someone cut the generator. Then chaos. The main doors of the warehouse exploded inward. The sound was apocalyptic. Metal shrieking, concrete fragmenting. The shockwave rippled through the building like a physical force. Smoke grenades detonated immediately. Thick white clouds billowed through the opening. Military-grade obscurant, the kind that defeated thermal imaging and made the world disappear. Through the smoke like wraiths emerging from fog came the SEALs. Not running, moving, controlled, precise. The way apex predators hunt. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness in staccato bursts. The sound of automatic weapons fire was deafening in the enclosed space. Each shot echoed off concrete and metal, multiplying, becoming thunder. Marlowe's mercenaries returned fire, but they were outmatched. These were soldiers of fortune facing the most elite warriors America produced. The firefight lasted 97 seconds. It felt like hours. Evelyn stayed over Ethan, protecting him, protecting the IV line still connecting them, her body as a shield between him and the bullets that sparked off metal equipment and concrete pillars. Someone screamed. One of Marlowe's men, hit. Another yelled something in a language Evelyn didn't recognize. Russian, maybe. Then silence. Footsteps, heavy, running. Military boots on concrete. A flashlight beam cut through the smoke, found Evelyn. She looked up, squinting against the light. A figure approached. Tactical gear, weapon raised but pointed at the ceiling, controlled. The light lowered slightly. Ma'am, Captain Reese Callahan. He looked at her, at Ethan, at the IV line still connecting them, at the blood. Jesus Christ, he breathed. You're giving him a direct transfusion. He's our H-null, Evelyn said. Her voice was steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Same as me. He was dying. Callahan knelt beside the table, his weapon now slung. He looked at Ethan's face. Recognition flickered. That's Senator Blackwell's son. I know. Callahan spoke into his radio. Valkyrie is secure. Repeat, Valkyrie is secure. Asset is alive. We have Ethan Blackwell, son of Senator Marcus Blackwell. He's critical, but stable. Requesting immediate CASEVAC. He looked at Evelyn. Really looked at her. Not at the patient. At her. At the woman who'd been kidnapped, threatened with death, and had responded by connecting her own circulatory system to a stranger's. "Who are you?" he asked. Not the question from before. This was different. Deeper. "I'm the nurse you were looking for," Evelyn said. "No, you're more than that." Around them, SEALs were securing the warehouse, zip-tying the surviving mercenaries. One SEAL was performing first aid on a wounded merc. Another was calling in the all-clear. "Where's Marlowe?" Evelyn asked. Callahan pointed to a corner. Vincent Marlowe sat against a wall, shoulder bleeding, zip-tied, but alive, conscious. Their eyes met across the warehouse. Marlowe gave a small nod. Acknowledgement, maybe respect. "His daughter," Evelyn said. "Sophia, 8 years old. The syndicate has her. That's why he did this." Callahan's expression changed. "Say again." "They took his daughter, forced him to kidnap me, to keep Ethan alive as leverage against the senator. Marlowe's not the villain here. He's a victim." Callahan processed this, spoke into his radio. "Command, we need FBI hostage rescue on standby. We have intelligence on a kidnapped child. Sophia Marlowe, age 8. Cross-reference with recent missing persons. Priority 1. He looked back at Evelyn. "The transfusion. Is it done?" Evelyn checked the bag. Nearly empty. Checked Ethan's vitals. Blood pressure 92/60. Heart rate 110. Stable. Not good, but stable. Almost. Another minute. "We have a Black Hawk inbound. 3 minutes out. Can he be moved?" "Carefully. Very carefully. The lung injury makes him fragile." A SEAL approached. Young. Maybe 25. Corpsman insignia on his gear. "Ma'am, I'm Tyler Brennan, team medic. Let me take over." Evelyn assessed him. Saw the youth. The nervousness. The equipment that was top of the line, but the experience that came only with time and repetition and watching people die despite your best efforts. "Have you ever managed a direct transfusion in the field?" she asked. "No, ma'am." "Then you're going to learn right now." She guided his hands to the IV site. "Keep pressure here. When the bag is empty, you'll disconnect. Apply pressure for 30 seconds, then secure this line. Not tight. Just secure. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am." The bag drained. Brennan disconnected. His hands were steadier now, following her instructions. Evelyn stood. The world tilted slightly. 2 units of blood. She'd given almost a liter. Her blood pressure was probably in the low 90s, but she'd been here before. She knew her limits. Callahan caught her arm. "You okay?" "I will be. Get him to medical care." The sound of rotors approached, growing louder. The familiar thump, thump, thump that meant extraction. That meant safety. The Black Hawk set down in the parking lot outside the warehouse. Rotors never stopped. This was a hot extract. 4 SEALs carried Ethan on a collapsible stretcher, moving fast but smooth. Evelyn walked beside them, her hand on his wrist, monitoring pulse. The helicopter's crew chief reached down. Strong hands pulled her up. Then the stretcher. Efficient. Practiced. Ethan was secured to the floor. Brennan hooked him to a portable monitor. Callahan climbed in last. The crew chief gave thumbs up to the pilots. The Black Hawk lifted. The ground fell away. The warehouse became small. Then smaller. Then just another dark rectangle in Seattle's industrial district. "Where are we going?" Evelyn asked through the headset Callahan had given her. "USS Gerald R. Ford," Callahan said. 22 minutes flight time. "Aircraft carrier." "Yes, ma'am. Admiral's orders. The people who shot Ethan Blackwell have compromised hospital security in Seattle. Senator Blackwell requested military medical care. Somewhere secure." Evelyn nodded. It made sense. In a horrible, complicated way it made sense. She looked at Ethan, pale but breathing, alive because she'd refused to let him die. The helicopter climbed to 2,000 feet, banking west, toward the Pacific, toward the massive floating fortress that was the USS Gerald R. Ford. Evelyn closed her eyes, just for a moment. Then Ethan gasped. His back arched. The monitor began screaming. Evelyn's eyes snapped open. Training kicked in before thought. SpO2 dropping, Brennan yelled. 94%. 90. 88. Evelyn was already moving, positioning herself over Ethan, looking at his chest. The right side wasn't expanding properly, not moving with the left. Tension pneumothorax, she said. Brennan stared at her. What altitude change? We went from sea level to 2,000 feet. Any trapped air in his chest cavity is expanding. It's collapsing his lung, compressing his heart. The monitor showed oxygen saturation dropping. 85%. 82. Ethan's lips were turning blue again. Cyanosis. His brain was starving for oxygen. "We need to land," Brennan said, panic creeping into his voice. "We're over Puget Sound," Callahan said. "Nearest land is 14 minutes. "He doesn't have 14 minutes, Evelyn said. Her voice was calm, the voice that had talked 63 service members through their darkest moments. "He doesn't have 5. 79%. 76. Ethan was dying. Right there, in the helicopter, after everything. "What do you need?" Callahan asked. No hesitation, no doubt. Whatever she needed, he'd make it happen. 14-gauge needle. 18-inch angiocatheter if you have it, for needle decompression. Brennan fumbled through his medical kit. Supplies spilled. His hands were shaking. "I don't have 14-gauge. Largest I have is 16. That won't work. Not long enough to penetrate the chest wall and reach the pleural space. Then what?" Evelyn turned to Callahan, held out her hand. "Your knife." Callahan didn't hesitate. Didn't question. He pulled the combat blade from his chest rig. 7 inches of serrated steel, the kind of knife designed to cut through rope seatbelts, body armor, and flesh with equal efficiency. He placed it in her palm. Handle first. "Ma'am," Brennan breathed, "you can't perform a thoracostomy in a moving helicopter with a combat knife." "Watch me," Evelyn said. She ripped Ethan's shirt open. The fabric tore easily, blood-soaked, ruined anyway. His chest was exposed, pale skin, dark bruising around the gunshot wound, subcutaneous emphysema from the air leak. She positioned her fingers, counting ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5th intercostal space, then moved laterally. Mid-axillary line. The landmark was clear even in the dim red light of the helicopter's interior. "Hold him down," she said. Callahan and another SEAL pinned Ethan's shoulders, his arms. The helicopter hit turbulence, dropped 10 feet. Evelyn compensated, keeping her hand steady, keeping the position marked. She placed the tip of the blade against skin. "I'm sorry," she whispered. To Ethan, to herself, to the universe that demanded impossible choices. Then she cut. The blade sliced through skin, through subcutaneous fat, through intercostal muscle. Blood welled immediately, bright red arterial spray from a small vessel she'd nicked, but she'd hit the landmark perfectly. The helicopter banked hard. Evelyn's world tilted, but her hands stayed steady. Years of practice, years of doing this in worse conditions. She deepened the incision. 2 inches, enough to reach the pleural space. Then she dropped the knife. It clattered on the metal floor, blood on the blade. She did something that would make any civilian doctor faint. She stuck her finger into the wound, pushing through muscle, feeling for the pleural space, for the lung, for the trapped air that was killing him. The helicopter shook. Her finger slipped. She repositioned, pushed deeper. There, she felt it, the pressure, the trapped air, waiting to be released. She swept her finger. Blunt dissection, creating a channel, a vent. And then, his air escaped. Not just air, pink, frothy blood. The kind that comes from damaged lung tissue that's been pushed past its limit. But the pressure was gone. Ethan's chest expanded. Right side inflating, matching the left. The monitor began to climb. 82%, 85, 88, 91, 94. 97. "He's coming back," Brennan said, awe in his voice. His SpO2 is normalizing. Evelyn pulled her finger out. Blood covered her hand, covered her sleeve, covered the floor of the helicopter. She grabbed gauze from Brennan's kit. Packed the wound, not closing it. That would trap air again, just managing the bleeding. Vented chest seal, she said. Over the incision. It needs to allow air out, but not in. Brennan applied it. His hands were steadier now. He was learning, watching, understanding. Ethan's oxygen saturation stabilized at 96%. His color improved, the blue tinge fading from his lips, his respiratory rate slowing from 40 breaths per minute to 28. Still elevated, but survivable. Evelyn sat back. Her hands were shaking now. Adrenaline dump. The surgery was over. Her body realized what she'd just done. She looked at Callahan. He was staring at her. Not at Ethan. At her. "Who are you?" he asked. Third time. But this time it wasn't a question. It was a statement. An acknowledgement. "I'm just a nurse," Evelyn said. "No," Callahan said quietly. "You're not." Evelyn looked down at her hands, covered in Ethan's blood, in her own blood from the transfusion, in the blood from the improvised surgery. "I used to be more," she said quietly, "a long time ago." "Valkyrie," Callahan said. Statement, not question. "That was the name they gave me when I kept people alive who had no business surviving. It fits." The helicopter flew on over dark water, the lights of Seattle fading behind them. Ahead, barely visible in the darkness, the massive gray fortress of the USS Gerald R. Ford. And in the back of the Black Hawk, strapped to the floor, covered in blood and kept alive by monitors, and a nurse who'd refused to let him die. Ethan Blackwell breathed, because Evelyn Thatcher had decided he would. The USS Gerald R. Ford was a floating city. Evelyn had been on carriers before. During her deployments, medical evacuations, resupply missions, but never like this. Never landing on the flight deck with a critical patient. Never with the full resources of the most advanced warship ever built at her disposal. The Black Hawk touched down. The deck crew moved with choreographed precision. A medical team was waiting. Trauma surgeon in full surgical scrubs, 2 surgical nurses, an anesthesiologist. Equipment on rolling carts. They transferred Ethan to a proper gurney, wheeled him toward the island, toward the medical bay. Evelyn started to follow. A hand on her shoulder stopped her. She turned. A man stood there in a white Navy uniform, 4 stars on his collar, admiral stars that gleamed even in the dim deck lighting. "Corman Thatcher," he said. His voice was deep, authoritative, but not unkind. "I'm Admiral Donovan Pierce. Welcome aboard the Ford." "Admiral?" Evelyn's spine straightened automatically. Old training, old reflexes that never quite faded. "Captain Callahan briefed me. What you did tonight. In the warehouse, in the helicopter." Pierce looked at her hands, still covered in blood. "That was exceptional work." "Ethan needs surgery, Admiral. Proper surgical repair. I just kept him alive long enough to—" "You did more than that." Pierce gestured toward the island. "Walk with me." They moved across the flight deck. Rain had started again. Light drizzle. The ship's lights created halos in the moisture. Pierce led her through a hatch, down a corridor. The ship thrummed with power. Generators. Reactors. The heartbeat of a vessel designed to project American power anywhere on Earth. They entered a briefing room, small, secure, a large monitor on one wall, maps, tactical displays. "Sit," Pierce said. Evelyn sat. Her legs were weak. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind exhaustion and the beginning of anemia from the blood loss. Pierce sat across from her. "What did Vincent Marlowe tell you about Ethan Blackwell? That he's Senator Blackwell's son? That someone tried to kill him? That the people who ordered it changed their minds? Wanted leverage instead? Did he tell you why?" "No, Admiral." Pierce pulled up a file on the monitor. Photographs, documents, surveillance images. "Ethan Blackwell is a federal prosecutor," Pierce said. "For the last 3 years, he's been building a case against an international weapons trafficking syndicate, They move military hardware to hostile nations, small arms, rocket launchers, explosives. He paused. Last month, Ethan discovered they were attempting to acquire fissile material, weapons-grade uranium, for a dirty bomb. Evelyn's blood went cold. The syndicate ordered a hit, professional assassination. But Ethan's bodyguard, a former Marine named David Chen, took the bullet, saved Ethan's life at the cost of his own. Pierce brought up another image, Vincent Marlowe. The syndicate hired Marlowe to finish the job, but Marlowe has a daughter, Sophia, 8 years old. They took her. Yes, as insurance, to force Marlowe's compliance. He was supposed to kill Ethan, but when the syndicate reconsidered, decided leverage was more valuable than a corpse, they ordered Marlowe to keep him alive instead, using me as the blood supply. Exactly. And Sophia, did you find her? Pierce's expression softened. FBI hostage rescue team extracted her 43 minutes ago. She's safe. Currently en route to Naval Hospital Bremerton with her grandmother. Minor dehydration, some bruising, but physically unharmed. Evelyn closed her eyes. Relief washed through her like a wave. Thank God. Marlowe will face charges, but given the circumstances, the coercion, I expect the prosecutors will show leniency. Probably a plea deal, 5 to 7 years instead of life. He was trying to save his daughter. Yes, but he still kidnapped you. Endangered a federal witness. Facilitated a terrorist organization. Pierce leaned forward. The law doesn't always account for the complexity of human motivation. Evelyn looked at her hands. What happens now, Admiral? Now Ethan goes into surgery. Dr. Lillian Hayes is already scrubbing in. Evelyn's head snapped up. Lillian is here. We brought her from St. Augustine 3 hours ago via COD flight. She's the best trauma surgeon in Seattle, and she's cleared for this level of operation. Pierce paused. She also insisted on being here, said something about not trusting anyone else with your patient. Evelyn smiled despite the exhaustion. That sounds like Lily. You can observe if you'd like, but you've lost significant blood. You need fluids, rest, medical evaluation. I've worked on less, Admiral. Pierce studied her, then nodded. Observer status only. You don't touch anything. You don't interfere. Agreed? Agreed. They stood. Pierce led her toward the medical bay, through corridors painted navy gray, past sailors who stopped and stared. Word had spread. The civilian woman who'd performed field surgery in a helicopter, who'd given her own blood to save a senator's son. They reached the medical bay. Through the glass, Evelyn could see the OR being prepped. Lillian in surgical gown, gloves, mask. Only her eyes visible. Their eyes met through the glass. Lillian's expression said everything. Relief, pride, questions that would have to wait. Evelyn scrubbed in at the sink, put on a gown, stood in the corner of the OR where she could see but not interfere, and watched Lillian Hayes save Ethan Blackwell's life with proper instruments and proper technique and the full resources of a modern surgical suite. The surgery took 4 hours and 17 minutes. They removed the bullet fragments, repaired the damaged lung tissue, reinflated the collapsed lung, closed the chest with proper drainage tubes. When it was done, when Ethan was stable and intubated and being wheeled to the ICU, Lillian pulled down her mask and looked at Evelyn. You did good, Evie, she said. Kept him alive long enough for me to fix him properly. Team effort, Evelyn said. No, you saved him. I just finished the job. Evelyn felt something inside her chest. Warmth, recognition, the feeling of being seen by someone who understood. Come on, Lillian said. You need an IV, fluids, maybe a transfusion of your own. You look like death. I feel like death. Then let's fix that. They walked to a recovery room. A corpsman started an IV, lactated Ringer's solution. Evelyn felt the cold fluid entering her vein, felt her blood pressure start to stabilize. She lay back on the bed, and for the first time in 12 hours, Evelyn Thatcher let herself rest. She woke 58 hours later. The passage of time was disorienting. One moment she was lying down for a quick rest. The next she was in a berthing compartment. Clean sheets. IV still in her arm, but running slower now, monitor beeping quietly. Lillian sat in a chair beside the bed, reading a medical journal. She looked up when Evelyn stirred. "Welcome back," Lillian said. Evelyn's throat was dry. "How long?" 2 days, 14 hours. You were severely anemic, dehydrated, exhausted. Your body shut down. Ethan. Stable. Extubated yesterday morning. Sitting up, eating, asking for you. Evelyn tried to sit up. The room spun slightly. "Easy," Lillian said. "You're still low on hemoglobin. We gave you 2 units of packed cells, but your body needs time to recover." "I need to see him." "You need to rest." "Lily, he's fine, Evie, I promise. No complications. Lung is re-expanded. Chest tubes came out this morning. He'll make a full recovery." Evelyn lay back. The hospital. St. Augustine. What happened? Lillian's expression changed. "There have been developments." "What kind of developments?" "The kind involving admirals and senators and news crews. The story broke yesterday. Heroic nurse saves senator's son after being fired for saving patient. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, everyone's running it." Evelyn's heart sank. "Oh no. Oh yes, your face is everywhere. The hospital's getting destroyed on social media. Director Hargrove's been answering questions for 2 days straight. Dr. Ashford," Lillian paused. "Well, let's just say his career trajectory has changed significantly." Before Evelyn could ask more, the door opened. Admiral Pierce entered. Behind him, Captain Callahan, both in dress uniforms. "Corpsman Thatcher," Pierce said. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck, sir." "Understandable. You saved a federal prosecutor, performed combat surgery in a moving aircraft, gave 2 units of your own blood." He paused. "The Navy Cross ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow, 1400 hours, at St. Augustine Medical Center." Evelyn blinked. "What, you're being awarded the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism beyond the call of duty?" "Admiral, It's not optional, ma'am. The ceremony will be public. Full dress uniforms, press coverage. Senator Blackwell will present it personally." The room tilted. "At the hospital, the one that fired me?" "Yes, we thought it appropriate, given the circumstances." Pierce's expression was neutral, but his eyes glinted. "Director Hargrove would also like to speak with you at the ceremony. She has a proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "The kind that comes with a corner office and the authority to fire incompetent physicians." Evelyn stared at him. "You're joking." "I don't joke, Corpsman. I'm an admiral." The ceremony was held in the main lobby of St. Augustine Medical Center. They'd set up a small stage. American flag. Navy flag. Podium with the hospital's logo. Every member of the hospital staff was required to attend. Standing room only. Over 300 people crammed into a space designed for half that. Evelyn stood backstage in her navy dress blues. They'd found her old uniform, had it cleaned and pressed, made sure every ribbon was properly arranged. The fabric felt strange after 14 years, tighter around the shoulders than she remembered. But it fit. She felt like an imposter. "You ready?" Callahan asked. He was in dress blues too, seal trident gleaming on his chest, medals arranged with geometric precision. "No," Evelyn said honestly. "Good. Means you're human." They walked out together. The lobby erupted in applause. Evelyn's eyes scanned the crowd. Staff members she'd worked with for 14 years. Some looked proud. Some looked ashamed. Most just looked relieved that this wasn't happening to them. Dr. Ashford stood in the back, arms crossed, face carefully neutral. But Evelyn could see the tension in his jaw, the white knuckles, the rage he was barely containing. Director Hargrove stood on the stage, at the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone, "we are gathered here today to honor one of our own, someone we failed to recognize, failed to appreciate, failed to protect." Evelyn climbed the stairs, stood at attention. Admiral Pierce approached with the medal, Navy Cross, bronze. shaped like a cross with an eagle in the center, suspended from a ribbon of blue and white. But before he could present it, the lobby doors opened. A man entered. Late 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, face that had been on television and in newspapers for 3 decades. Senator Marcus Blackwell. Behind him, in a wheelchair pushed by a Navy corpsman, was Ethan, pale but alert, dressed in civilian clothes, alive. The crowd parted. Father and son approached the stage. Senator Blackwell took the microphone from Hargrove. "I'm here," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "to thank the woman who saved my son's life. Not once, but 3 times in one night." He gestured to the screen behind the stage. It came to life. Footage began to play. Combat footage. Evelyn's heart stopped. She knew what this was. Helmet camera footage from one of her deployments. She'd never seen it, never wanted to. But now 300 people were watching. The footage showed a firefight in a desert. The exact location classified. Date redacted, but the situation clear. Service members pinned down, taking casualties. Someone screaming for a corpsman. And there was Evelyn, 20 years younger, running through incoming fire, dragging a wounded Marine to cover, starting an IV with one hand while returning fire with the other, performing a cricothyrotomy with a ballpoint pen because the soldier's airway was crushed and there was no time for proper equipment. The footage cut. New scene, different deployment, different year. A vehicle hit by an IED. Men on fire, screaming, Evelyn pulling them out, one by one. Extinguishing flames, treating burns with whatever she could find. Mud, water, strips of her own uniform, more footage, different missions, different fights, different impossible situations, but always the same. Evelyn running toward danger, toward death, bringing people back. One clip showed her performing a blood transfusion in a bombed-out building, using her own blood because the supply had been destroyed. The wounded soldier's face blurred for privacy, but Evelyn recognized him. Corporal Jake Wilson. He'd survived, married his high school sweetheart, had 3 kids now. The screen went dark. The lobby was silent. 300 people who'd worked with Evelyn for 14 years, who'd watched her mop floors and empty bedpans and take abuse from doctors half her age they hadn't known. Senator Blackwell spoke, his voice carrying in the silence. This woman saved 63 service members in 4 combat deployments. She earned the call sign Valkyrie. In Norse mythology, Valkyries chose who lived and who died on the battlefield. He paused. Evelyn Thatcher chose life, 63 times. And when she came home, when she tried to continue serving, in a different way. We let her scrub floors. He turned to Evelyn. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Evelyn's vision blurred. She didn't cry often, hadn't cried in years except for that night in the parking garage. But this was too much. Admiral Pierce stepped forward. He held the Navy Cross. Hospital Corpsman First Class Evelyn Thatcher, he said, his voice formal and clear. For extraordinary heroism and conspicuous gallantry in the face of extreme danger, for valor above and beyond the call of duty in multiple combat actions, for continuing to serve when others would have quit, for saving lives when others would have walked away. The United States Navy awards you the Navy Cross. He placed the medal around her neck. The weight of it settled on her chest. Bronze and ribbon and the acknowledgement of what she'd done, who she'd been, who she still was. The lobby erupted, applause, cheering, people she'd worked with for 14 years, seeing her for the first time. Evelyn looked out at the crowd. She found Dr. Ashford. Their eyes met. He looked small suddenly, diminished. The man who'd called her just a janitor, now standing in the presence of something he couldn't diminish or dismiss. Director Hargrove approached the microphone. Evelyn, she said, I owe you an apology, a profound one. I let politics override good judgment. I let fear override what was right. She paused. I'm offering you a position, Director of Emergency Medicine Training, full authority over protocols, over hiring, over standards, over everything. The crowd murmured. Evelyn looked at Hargrove. And Dr. Ashford? Hargrove's expression hardened. Dr. Ashford has been suspended pending a full review of his clinical competency. His privileges are revoked effective immediately. Evelyn turned to Ashford. He stood frozen, face red, hands clenched. "I'm not doing this for revenge," Evelyn said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm doing it because patients deserve better. They deserve doctors who listen to nurses, who check lab values, who put ego aside and do what's right." She turned back to Hargrove. "I accept the position, on one condition. Name it. Dr. Ashford doesn't get fired. He gets retrained. He shadows me for 6 months. He learns what military medicine really is. He learns humility." Evelyn paused. "Everyone deserves a second chance, even him." The lobby was silent. Ashford stared at her, shock replacing anger. Hargrove nodded slowly. "Agreed." Evelyn looked at Ashford. "You're going to hate the next 6 months, doctor, but you'll be better for it." Ashford said nothing, just nodded. Once. Acknowledgement of a defeat he couldn't escape. Senator Blackwell stepped forward, shook Evelyn's hand. "Thank you for my son, for giving me more time with him." Ethan wheeled himself forward, looked up at Evelyn. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something I should have told you in the warehouse." Evelyn knelt, eye level with him. "What is it?" Ethan took a breath. "You saved my life twice, once last week, and once 28 years ago." Evelyn's breath caught. 1998, Ethan continued. "Interstate 5, the Blackwell accident. Do you remember?" And suddenly she did. Flashback, 1998. The rain came down in sheets, the kind of Pacific Northwest storm that turned highways into ice rinks and made visibility drop to nothing. Evelyn was 30 years old, civilian nurse, driving home from a double shift at St. Augustine, exhausted, looking forward to sleep. Ahead, brake lights, swerving. A black SUV losing control on the slick asphalt. The SUV spun, once, twice, flipped, rolled down the embankment beside the highway. Evelyn pulled over, grabbed the medical kit she kept in her trunk, ran down the slope. The SUV was upside down, windshield shattered, steam rising from the crushed engine, the smell of gasoline heavy in the rain. Inside, a woman, early 30s, beautiful, unconscious, massive head trauma, blood pooling. And in the back seat, a child, maybe 3 years old, strapped in a car seat, crying, terrified, but alive. Evelyn assessed. The woman was dying. Skull fracture, internal bleeding, brain swelling. Even with immediate surgery, her chances were near zero. The child was savable. Minor injuries, shock, fear, but savable. She had to choose. One person or the other. There wasn't time for both. She chose the child. She pulled him out first, careful of potential spinal injury, but knowing the gasoline leak meant fire was coming. Ran him up the embankment, set him in her car, wrapped him in her jacket. "Stay here," she told him. "I'm getting your mommy." She ran back down, reached for the woman. The SUV's gas tank ignited. Not an explosion. Worse, a rush of flame that consumed everything. The vehicle. The woman still trapped inside. Evelyn tried. She ran toward the fire, but the heat was too intense. It drove her back, burned her hands, singed her hair. She stood there, 20 feet away, watching a mother burn to death while her son cried above. When the firefighters arrived 12 minutes later, they pulled a charred body from the wreckage. The boy was taken to the hospital. Minor injuries. Released to his father that night. Evelyn gave her statement, refused treatment for her burns, drove home, never spoke about it again. She'd made the right choice, the only choice, but she'd carried the guilt of it for 28 years. Back to present, Evelyn knelt before Ethan Blackwell, the boy she'd pulled from the fire, the man she'd saved again. "Your mother," she whispered, "Elizabeth." Ethan nodded, tears in his eyes. "I was too young to remember her face, but I remember yours, blue eyes, looking down at me, telling me I was safe, that everything would be okay. I should have saved her too. You couldn't. The fire. I chose you over her. Because I was savable. She wasn't. Ethan reached for Evelyn's hand. My father told me. When I was old enough to understand, you made the right call, the only call a field medic could make. Save who you can. Don't die trying to save someone who's already gone. Evelyn's vision blurred. 28 years of guilt, of wondering if she could have done more, should have tried harder. You've carried this, Ethan said softly. I can see it in your eyes. Let it go. My mother would want you to. My father does. I do. I think about her every time it rains. Then think about me instead. Think about the life you saved, the second chance you gave me, twice. Evelyn wiped her eyes. You grew up well. Your mother would be proud. Because you gave me the chance to grow up at all. They sat in silence. Two people connected by blood and fire and impossible choices made in the rain. Can I call you something? Ethan asked. What? Angel. That's what you were, that night. Last week. Both times. Evelyn smiled through tears. My call sign was Valkyrie. But Angel works too. Senator Blackwell approached, put a hand on his son's shoulder, looked at Evelyn. Thank you, he said. Simple words, but weighted with everything they meant. For 1998, for last week, for all of it. I just did my job, Senator. No, you did more than that. You gave me my son, twice. I can never repay that. He pulled out an envelope, handed it to Evelyn. What's this? Open it later. When you're alone, well, you'll see. 6 months passed. St. Augustine Medical Center changed. New protocols based on combat medicine principles. Aggressive, evidence-based, effective. Cardiac arrest survival rates increased 41%. Medical error lawsuits dropped 67%. Young doctors lined up to train under Evelyn Thatcher, to learn from the woman who'd kept service members alive in places where survival was optional. Dr. Garrett Ashford completed his 6-month retraining. He'd fought it at first, resented it. But slowly, grudgingly, he learned. He learned to listen to nurses. He learned to check lab values before ordering medications. He learned that saving lives wasn't about ego. It was about competence, humility, teamwork. He would never be a great doctor, but he became a good one, and that was enough. After his retraining, he resigned from St. Augustine. The memories were too heavy, the shame too present. He took a position at a small cosmetic practice, Premier Aesthetics and Wellness Spa, strip mall in Van Nuys. It wasn't Harvard, it wasn't prestigious. But he was helping people feel better about themselves, and he'd learned that sometimes that was enough. Evelyn sat in her office. Corner window, view of Seattle skyline, rain streaking the glass. On her desk, the envelope Senator Blackwell had given her. She'd opened it 3 months ago. Inside, a check for $1 million and a letter. Evelyn. This is not payment. You can't pay someone for saving your child's life. This is gratitude. Use it however you wish. But I have a request. A foundation is being established in Elizabeth's name. The Elizabeth Blackwell Combat Medicine Foundation, to train combat medics, to make sure every corpsman has the skills you had, so fewer people die on battlefields, so fewer mothers burn in cars. We'd like you to help run it, to teach the next generation of Valkyries. Please consider it. With deepest gratitude, Marcus Blackwell. Evelyn had said yes. The foundation launched last month, already training its first class of corpsmen. Evelyn taught on weekends, the latest techniques, the improvised solutions, the impossible choices that defined combat medicine. A knock on her office door. Come in? Ethan Blackwell entered. No wheelchair now, walking with just a slight limp. Suit and tie, briefcase, looking healthy, strong. Got a minute, he asked. Evelyn smiled. For you always. He sat, put a folder on her desk. What's this? Indictments. 47 members of the weapons trafficking syndicate We're rolling them up next week. Biggest bust in 20 years. We recovered the fissile material, stopped the dirty bomb, saved approximately 70,000 lives in downtown Los Angeles. Evelyn opened the folder. Names, charges, evidence. Vincent Marlowe, she said, seeing his name. Plea deal, 5 years, with credit for cooperation. He'll be out in 3. Gets to see Sophia grow up. We arranged for her to visit monthly. She's doing well, by the way. Started 3rd grade. Loves ponies and math. Good. He made bad choices, but for the right reasons. Ethan nodded. I wanted to thank you. Again. I know I keep saying it. You don't have to. Yes, I do. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. He handed it to her. Evelyn unwrapped it. A photograph. Old, faded, from 1998. It showed a burned-out SUV, fire trucks, emergency lights painting the rain red and blue. And in the foreground, Evelyn, 30 years old, holding a small child. Both of them wrapped in an emergency blanket, the child's face buried against her shoulder. My father took that, Ethan said. When he arrived at the scene, the firefighters wouldn't let him down to the car, wouldn't let him see her. But they let him see me, being held by a nurse with kind eyes who'd saved my life. He kept this for 28 years. He wanted you to have it, as proof that you did everything you could, that you made the right choice. Evelyn stared at the photo, at her younger self, at the boy who would become the man sitting across from her. Tell him thank you. Tell him yourself. He's outside. Wanted to come in but thought it might be too much. He's welcome any time. Evelyn stood, walked to the door, opened it. Senator Marcus Blackwell stood in the hallway, older than in the photos. Gray hair, weathered face, but the same kind eyes. Senator, Evelyn said. Ms. Thatcher. He extended his hand. She took it. I've wanted to meet you properly for 28 years, to say thank you in person for saving my son, for giving Elizabeth's death meaning by ensuring her child survived. I wish I could have saved her too. So do I, every day. But you made the choice a field medic has to make. Save who you can. And because of that, I've had 28 years with my son, watched him grow up, graduate, become a man who fights for justice. Ethan stood, joined them, which is why we wanted to show you this. He pulled out another document, official-looking, embossed seal. The Elizabeth Blackwell Combat Medicine Foundation has been fully funded. $100 million to train combat medics, to research battlefield trauma care, to make sure every service member has a Valkyrie watching over them. Evelyn's eyes widened. 100 million, the senator confirmed. It's the least we can do. Elizabeth would want her legacy to save lives. You'll help us make sure it does. Evelyn looked at them both, father and son, alive because of choices she'd made, choices that had haunted her for decades. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep teaching, Ethan said. Say you'll make sure the next generation is ready. That's all we ask. Evelyn looked at the Navy Cross on her wall, at the photograph from 1998, and at the city outside her window. She thought about 63 service members who'd lived because she refused to let them die. About Ethan Blackwell, who'd lived twice for the same reason. About all the people she'd never meet who would live because of what she'd taught, what she would continue to teach. Yes, she said, I'll help, for Elizabeth, for all of them. That night, Evelyn sat in her apartment, Barnaby the cat on her lap, rain tapping against the window. Her phone rang. Thatcher, she answered. Ma'am, it's Callahan. She smiled. Captain, what can I do for you? We have a situation. SEAL trainee injured in a combat exercise. Remote location. Young corpsman on scene. He needs guidance. Patch him through. Click. Static. Then a young voice. Panicked. Scared. Ma'am, I have what I think is a tension pneumothorax. I'm not sure. He's not breathing right, and I don't have... Slow down, Evelyn said. Her voice was calm, commanding, the voice that had talked 63 people through their darkest moments. Tell me exactly what you see. For the next 23 minutes, she walked the young corpsman through the procedure. step by step, calm and clear and certain. When it was done, when the seal was stable, the corpsman's voice was shaking with relief. "Thank you, ma'am. You saved his life." "You saved his life. I just reminded you what you already knew. You're a good corpsman. Keep being good." She hung up, looked at the Navy Cross on her wall, the photograph of her team from combat zones she'd never name, looked at the city lights below. Somewhere out there in places she'd never see, people were alive because of what she'd taught, because of what she'd done, because she'd refused to give up. She'd spent 14 years being told she was just a nurse, just a janitor, just someone who cleaned floors and took orders. It took one night to remind the world she was always more. And in the lives she continued to save in the corpsmen, she continued to train in the protocols, she continued to write, Valkyrie still flew. Evelyn Thatcher closed her eyes, and for the first time in decades she felt at peace. She'd come home, not to a place, to a purpose, and that made all the difference.